Hi everyone, it's Niamh here and welcome to my art journaling channel. Today we're going to be making some abstract marks on the burlap page in the Dina journal. So I'm just starting off on the burlap page in my journal. I've done what I usually do with my burlap and done a coat of gel medium over it and then put some tissue, the inside of a napkin, over the top and then sealed over the top. And the reason I do that is I don't like the see-through nature and how much paint seeps in and how long it takes to dry. So by doing this it seals the burlap, but it means that I still retain the texture because I love the texture of the page. So I'm just going in, I've just gessoed my page, or used white paint because I didn't have any gesso, and I'm going in with some cool colours and just sort of scraping them across the page. When I did this I really didn't have much of an idea of what I was doing. I knew I just wanted to play with paint, so that's what I was doing. You can see I've got my Use It Up journal next to me, and I'm just going in with the excess paint that I've got on my paintbrush and brushing it off. So now I'm going in with some warm colours, and unlike what I usually do, I haven't actually dried off the layers as I go, so I'm sort of putting wet on wet. I'm kind of trying to keep it to the one place, but so I'm not mixing it too much, but I'm not really worried about it. And now I'm going in and heating it. So usually when I'm sort of layering colours I do tend to dry them off in between, but I wanted sort of that blend, particularly with the cool colours in the black background. I wanted to blend them together a little bit more instead of having them blocky. So once I've finished doing my painting, I'm going over with my homemade stamp, which is just a bit of bubble wrap and a archival ink. So I found this really handy. I also just got paint on my ink pad, but I just used a wet wipe to wipe it off. So if you ever get ink on your ink pad, just wipe it off. If it's too much of an issue, you can always re-ink your ink pad if too much ink's been wiped off, but you never usually have that problem. So to continue on with the bubble theme, I thought, seeing I had the black dots on here, I'm going to add some white dots as well. So I'm just using this big dotty stencil with the different sizes and sponging some white paint over the top, just to add a little bit of extra texture onto the page. And again, there's no real rhyme or reason to this page. I'm just having fun doing stuff and putting on different things. I have put some paper down in between because I didn't have the page behind had something on it, so I didn't want to put paint on the page behind. Usually I don't think about it at the time, but I did for this one. As I usually do, I broke out my neon colours just to boost the colours on the page again. So you've got that sort of the yellows and the greens and pinks underneath, and then just by putting that neon colour over it, it just really intensifies that colour. Because I had leftover paint, my sponge was still inky, I went back to my Use It Up journal just to stamp everything in there. So I love using my Use It Up journal for stuff like this because everything's dirty already, and now I've got a really cool background that I can use another day when I don't have much time. I've sort of already half prepared one. So at this stage I'm wondering what I'm going to do next. I'm having a bit of a think, and I often have points like this. While I work fairly quickly, I find that I have moments in between that I need to sort of stop and think and go, not sure what I'm doing now. So I decided I'd break out my Stabilo woody pencils. These are, I think they're designed for kids, but they're amazing. They're just like the Stabilo All pencil I use, which is much thinner, but they're obviously much chunkier. They're called 3-in-1 pencils. They're water soluble. They're really waxy as well. If you heat them up on smoother page, they go on just like a crayon, so they're amazing for that. You can actually draw on glass with them. If I wanted to, and I've done this before, I could scribble onto the glass mat and then just use it as a watercolour over the top. So there's really cool ways that you can use those little pencils. For the background, I'm just doing some really simple mark making. So I've got the pencils and now I'm using my paint markers. I ended up getting some really wide paint markers, which I hadn't got before. I've usually only got the little ones, but I really like having some different sizes because you can sort of see, particularly from the blue marks in the background, by having the different sizes you can make different sized marks, obviously, and it just adds something to your page really, really quickly. So now I'm going into those little loops and colouring them in. You can see some of my paint wasn't quite dry. That's okay, just scribble it off in the end. Going back in, adding some yellows, just kind of using colours that I've used in the background, just to sort of boost the colours. Now the only thing I've found with those paint markers is that the white isn't very opaque, which I don't understand, because in the usual white that I have, it's very opaque. So I have shaken it and done all sorts of things. I don't know why in the wider nib that it's not quite as opaque as it usually is. If anyone knows the answer to that, that would be awesome. Because I wanted a little bit more white on the page, and again sort of sticking with that spotty theme, I've just used my fan brush and I've sprinkled some white acrylic paint over the background. I use my fan brush because I get a good range of little and big dots. And for me, I've sort of found it's the best way to go. I also, seeing I had my fan brush out, decided to get creative, and I had the red ink there, so I thought I'd do the same as well. You do need to be a little bit careful with splattering red ink, because if you do go too heavy with it, it can just look like blood. So be prepared, be warned. It can look really, really good, and it can look really, really bad. But as with everything in art, if you really hate it, you can always stick something over the top. That's, I think, why collage was invented, so someone could stick something over the top in the end. So I had this really funky background, which I really liked, but I wanted to have a focal image on it. So I did what I usually do when I get stuck, and break into my Dina Collage Collective. She has this funky little girl who has this really colourful background, or body, sorry, which kind of blended in with the colours I had. And on the page as well, it had the word art written next to it, so I just cut that off and actually stuck it on her face. Like I do with a lot of my figures when I glue them into my book, I've actually redrawn over it with the Stabilo All Pencil, and that just brings out that definition to the page again. I've also written in art is life, because it is. It's what keeps me happy. So by scribbling over it, it does two things. One, it sort of boosts the colour on the page, but also it helps you sort of get your hand into drawing little loose shapes like that, because it's something you need to practice, and it's something I need to practice because I'm still not there yet. So this is a close-up of the final page. It was really quick and simple. It's a great way to use your burlap up and have a go with it. And it's a great way to practice your mark making, or even just swatching some new things like my thick paint pens. I hadn't really used them much before, so it was a great way for me to swatch those out. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye for now.